Welcome to the Kara Michelle Show, where we break out of the matrix together and return heaven to earth. This is a place for the spiritual seekers and leaders, the dreamers and doers, the conscious creators and world changers. You can expect a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but mostly a whole lot of purpose, freedom, and sovereignty. And of course, all things quantum. May this podcast serve you in remembering the truth of who you are, all that you came here to do, and how deeply supported you are in doing it. You are incredibly powerful and your mission is protected. So it's time to dial up your frequency and recalibrate to your higher self and limitless potential. Get ready, because we're about to blast off. A new reality awaits you on the other side. I'll see you there. There is a very big difference between the lower and wounded feminine and the characteristics of the divine feminine energies. And I'm going to make a pretty big bet right now that the lower feminine is blocking your success. She's blocking your joy and pleasure. She's blocking your abundance and a deepening of your mission and purpose. And on this episode, I'm going to dive into what that looks like and how to shift it, because this has not only been a massive theme in my own life, but it's something I notice with clients a lot. And as y'all know, I love analyzing patterns. I love uncovering the root causes of these things and simplifying them so that more people can break free and not stay stuck there. And this is a really, really big one. So I want to preface this by saying that we all have both masculine and feminine energies, regardless of your gender and your physical body. But with that said, we also have like lower aspects or higher aspects in terms of characteristics. And what I'm going to be talking about today is specifically programming. I am very passionate or very committed, maybe, to differentiating between the person and the program, the heart and the program, the soul, the essence, and the program, because these are two incredibly different things. So even when I'm going to give personal examples of the person or someone where this showed up, and they were operating from a wounded feminine template or wounded feminine programming, this does not mean I judge that person. This does not mean I think they're a bad person or that they're heartless or evil or that I wish ill will on them. It's differentiating the fact between their heart and soul may be pure, and yet they may be trapped in a program that is actually not of the highest good for those around them. And what I mean by this is the wounded feminine, and typically a lot of us do see this in our mothers, so that's kind of an easy example to give, although I don't want to paint them all with the same brush. And hopefully, as the planet, not hopefully, it definitely is, as the planet continues to ascend, we're going to see less and less of this. But typically in previous generations, our mothers were carrying a lot of traumas, and they had been programmed very deeply by society and what was normal or expected of them, or the lack of respect that they were shown. And so the wounded feminine energy is very much that archetype where nothing is ever good enough for her. There's such a high level of judgment of self and judgment of others, this extreme perfectionism, constantly comparing to one another and comparing themselves, therefore bringing in a lot of shame and a lot of guilt when either they don't measure up or when someone else doesn't measure up. There's also a lot of projection. And so when the wounded feminine isn't getting her way or things aren't looking the way that she likes, there tends to be this blame of other people or kind of putting them down to try to make her feel better. a lot of that like wagging finger, you can imagine maybe like a stereotypical mother when she's not getting her way or she's frustrated and starts to like nag and demean the child or the other person because she's unhappy with herself, and instead of taking responsibility for her own happiness, she blames it on someone else. We also have very strongly the victim mentality and the martyr, right? So the victim is like, nothing ever works out for me and woe is me, and a very disempowered place. I personally see this very connected to the wounded feminine over the wounded masculine. I think the wounded masculine tends to continue to force and like hustle and overwork from this kind of energy, whereas the wounded feminine tends to just collapse deeper into her pain, into her lower emotions, and into bringing people down with her to match her there because she's just stuck and unhappy and miserable again in her own experience. And instead of like making a change to rise up out of it, she tries to pull people in and almost gets this high off of consuming that pain or consuming that energy and bringing it with her. The evil queen from Snow White is such a great example of this because she had this massive competition, this insane jealousy towards Snow White, and like heaven forbid that she's not the fairest of them all. And so she wants to do literally everything to take down the other woman and so that she can feel better about herself. Like classic, classic wounded feminine. I think of so many parents on the sports teams I played on. I was in the most toxic environments every single year. Clearly, some major karmic energy playing out that I believe was passed down from my mom and then also just became my sports career, because I know a lot of people who did not have the same experience and actually had some really healthy and beautiful and loving teammates and parents and team dynamics. That was like not the case ever in a single sport I played for decades of my life. I was surrounded by a very wounded feminine template, and it was like the most evil experiences and evil energy from these other mothers because they were, again, as I've mentioned, so unhappy in their own life or feeling so unseen and undervalidated that they were trying to live vicariously through their children, and their children's success was a direct reflection of them in their mind. It shouldn't be, but that's how they were making it out. And so they're like forcing the kids to do better, putting this extreme pressure and perfectionism on them, constantly judging and comparing, fighting and like being dramatic and gossipy and nasty with the other mothers or even to the daughters because they were just like trying to literally consume energy to somehow lift them up. And it's really nasty, like really dark. That's the best way I can describe it. And then we have the martyr template, which again, I see as very related to the feminine, the lower feminine as well, over the masculine. That might just be personal bias, but it's very much the let me overgive until I'm exhausted or burnt out or drained, and then I'm going to blame you and be mad at you for my situation. And it's like hilarious when you look at it. And this is why I love seeing it as like a program versus a person, because again, no shame. Like I love, there's a lot of people in my family dynamics and extended family, and I know a lot of clients and friends and their family members as well. We're like, this is so strong. And I even had that for quite a while. I've probably struggled with a bit of both, definitely the victim and the martyr. But it was like this people pleasing, this chronic people pleasing, where you absolutely abandon yourself to try to get your validation, your love through pleasing someone else and meeting their needs. But then even if they appreciate it, or if they don't, heaven forbid they don't appreciate it, you are then like the victim again, where it's like, woe is me, and now I'm so hard done by, and you hold it over their heads because you did something and it wasn't reciprocated. So there's a very strong difference between giving from unconditional love and giving from a full cup, which is why I'm such a firm believer of like your first priority is literally to heal yourself and live a life that's so aligned and magical that your cup is full and you feel great and you get to overflow. Because otherwise, you're going to be in a more wounded energy and you're going to be like desperate or needing or trying to take from others to lift or fill you up. So, with that quick little premise around some of the typical wounded feminine energies, here's why this is blocking you from all the beautiful things that you want in your life. I'm going to get into on another episode more about lower or wounded masculine as well. And I'm going to make episodes specifically about this related to business because there's so many ways I see this and so many things I can get into. If you have any questions, if you have thoughts, if this sparks light bulbs or you notice patterns or places this might be showing up in your own life, please comment or send me a direct message on Instagram even. I would love to dive into this further, and I want to make these things as supportive and interactive as possible. So please feel free to let me know, and I can do future episodes on it as well. A lot of the reprogramming work is done inside my quantum healing bundles, and that's where I do deep trainings on all of these things as well that I'm going to touch on today, and also give you guided hypnosis tracks so that you can literally plug in for 15 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes or 45 minutes, get into a relaxed meditative state and let your subconscious do the work for you to clear out and break these patterns and shift so that you are not continuing to operate from any of these places. And the link for the quantum healing bundles and the hypnosis packages that I have is in the show notes in the description down below. So you can check that out there if you're wanting to really dive headfirst into this work. It has absolutely changed every area of my life. Once you do this, there's no going back to how you used to go through the motions or kind of just operate in the world. It's going to help you become truly an empowered co-creator of your reality, which I think is what we all want, is what we all deserve. So I'm really excited to be bringing that to you in these bundles. Now, I want to start by looking at purpose specifically and or mission in business. So even if you don't have your own business, but maybe you're dreaming of starting your own and there's something holding you back, or this could even be related to the job that you're currently working for someone else. But the wounded feminine, the programming that I'm going to make an educated guess that you probably experienced a lot of in your upbringing, whether directly from your mother or the matriarch line, or whether from teachers in school. Ooh, that's a big one. Or society and the feminine kind of archetype that we were all shown through media or TV shows and movies. Don't even get me started on how women are portrayed in movies, especially when we look back like 15, 20 years ago when I was growing up, or even before that. It's like such lower feminine energy that we were just taught to think is normal, instead of realizing like that's freaking toxic and it does not have to be the way that we operate. But regardless of where you are in your career or your own business, here's where the wounded feminine could be showing up and blocking you right now. Because I went through this recently for myself, and it was one of the biggest eye-opening moments around I have been feeling afraid to show up at my fullest because of the judgment and the comments or the things that my mom said to me growing up, as well as because of my mom's own shame or constant fear of judgment and constant comparison, it has felt like I'm walking on eggshells because I know she has, we could say shame, or definitely, I would say some maybe embarrassment or judgment for the fact that I took a very non-traditional path, and she's not able to have the everyday, I think, boring conversations with friends or family about like Kara got her degree, or Kara has her 9 to 5, or Kara just bought a house, or like the traditional things that she thinks are normal or that she was programmed to strive for or to kind of idolize. I have literally done none of them, and I'm over here trying to carve a very different path for myself than the history of my family. And I feel this impending judgment, this impending kind of criticism or finger pointing, where I'm always afraid that I'm going to be condemned or I'm going to receive a lecture or be shamed for the path that I've taken. And again, this is not towards my mom as a human being. I love her, and she has been incredibly supportive with a lot of parts of my journey and trying to understand me and, yeah, support me in the path. But because of a wounded feminine program that was playing out for a long time, I still have this fear. And I realized recently that that is the biggest block that has been sabotaging my entire business. I've had my business for 5 years. I knew since I was a little girl what I wanted to do and how I wanted to help the people and the planet and make the world better. I have done all the things to strengthen my intuition, to do the inner healing, to feel empowered in who I am, to create a life and a business where I get to show up in the world as my highest self. And yet there is this cloud. There's this feeling in the background of how I will be shamed or judged or criticized, or that it's not safe to speak my truth because my truth doesn't align with hers. Shout out to everyone who feels that way or has felt that way. That's a very lower feminine program to experience, where you do not feel safe, you do not feel good enough, you do not feel worthy of the life that you dream of because of all the incredible amounts of judgment or conditions that were put on you. Not blaming our parents, again, I think it's a lot of like the sign of the times, but think of parents or teachers you had who believed they knew what was best for you. And they kept trying to tell you, you need to do this, you have to do that. Oh, you messed up here, you made this mistake, that wasn't good enough. And this constant, oh, overwhelming amount of feedback and overwhelming amount of boxes to try to fit into in order to just be enough. And it's like no matter what you do, something's wrong. No matter what you do, you're going to hear about it. And I know for me, actually, super ironic or maybe funny, because I've been planning to do an episode on this for a while. Also, just trying to empower myself and my voice in expressing it with love, but honesty. And last night had a conversation with my mom where we were discussing our relationship is better when we're not spending much time together, which I think is also probably kind of normal. But one of the things that's hard is that there are so many aspects of my dad in me that I love. Like, and they make up a huge core part of who I am, but they triggered my mom. So my whole life, those characteristics were not good enough for her. She always found fault in them. And so now I'm like, well, you're obviously seeing fault in me because I have these things too. And it's like I am part made by my dad. So like if you are annoyed or despise or judging these things in him, you're reflecting that directly at me as well all the time. So, of course, I'm not going to feel safe to express them or embody them or show up that way because I haven't been given a safe space where I'm loved unconditionally. Yet all of this could be solved if she would look within herself and see, oh, those things trigger me for this reason. These things are mirroring these beliefs or these wounds that I have. Instead of blaming my dad or blaming me, it's like, how can I also look at why this is triggering me? We see that on a global scale with the world right now. Everyone's so trigger happy and immediately says, you can't say that because it makes me feel this way. How dare you do this thing because that makes me feel stressed? And it's like, bro, your stress is your problem. Your trigger is your problem. If something is showing up in you, it's a wound that needs to be healed in you. We can't go around telling the entire planet to stop talking about certain things or to only show up the way we want them to. That's not how Earth works. So that's a very lower feminine programming. And truly, the way it was showing up in my business, as I mentioned, was this fear to step fully into my purpose and to show up at my fullest because there's always been so many conditions, which also ties into schools and teachers, not just my mom, but always so many conditions that it feels like you're constantly trying to please someone or you're constantly racking your brain of like, ooh, will this receive judgment from this person? Better not do it then. Ooh, is this going to trigger them? Will that make them unhappy? How might people respond to this? And beautiful, beautiful example. I'm in a mastermind right now with a bunch of other amazing, empowering, like super inspiring women who are all doing really cool things on the planet. And we actually all said the other day how there's this fear of like rocking the boat and a fear of speaking up and saying the wrong thing or saying the thing that triggers people because there's this still very heavy program on the planet where if you say something that people don't like, they come at you instead of just reflecting on it, being open-minded, being willing to see both sides, not making it mean you're a horrible person. It's almost like that cancel culture, which I would say is very connected to the wounded feminine, where it's like it's that cold cutting and just cutting you off completely because you're not what she wanted you to be. And like that, even just thinking or tuning into that energy makes my heart close off. It makes me want to like curl up and find safety and warmth somewhere. And no wonder it's hard to show up at your fullest when you've always been judged for that. Another perfect example that I'm going to tie in here because I guarantee you felt this is one of my friends was sharing the other day about how she has this fear of being seen, of showing up, being bright, right? Like bright and light and shining fully, getting attention, because there's all these different moments of trauma in her upbringing, teenage years, even university days, where other women would judge and put her down because she had something that they wanted or she had something they didn't have. It's that jealousy and competition or comparison that then causes the wounded feminine to try to stuff you down and make you smaller instead of like again removing herself, going and doing the fucking work and like building up confidence, building up self-love, realizing there's no competition, realizing that she can be good enough too, and like we can all thrive together in our own ways. But this friend of mine had graduated from university, and she invited family and wanted to throw this kind of graduation party just to celebrate, which, like, that's an exciting time. You deserve to celebrate and be proud of your accomplishments. And then she had an auntie who made a comment to her mom about, like, oh, we've got to celebrate her again, and like this and that, and like just totally demeaning. And so then my friend was like, I don't feel like I want to, like, I guess it's bad that I'm celebrating myself. I guess it's bad that I did something that I'm proud of. And how in your current career is this wounded feminine holding you back from so much more? She's holding you back from showing up fully and embracing how incredible you are and how special you are and how unique you are in all that you do, because you spent a lifetime feeling judged for it, or compared to, or knocked down because someone else was uncomfortable with your light. And it's through the reprogramming work that we can shift that. So I had the most beautiful experience the other day after realizing this particular block in my business, where I got to take my power back from my mom and from these memories. Again, it's not her as a person. It's like the programming that she was operating in. But that programming caused a lot of damage and like a lot of work for me to work through and process. And I'm so grateful I have the tools to do so, because otherwise I'd spend my life trapped under that. And I already feel like I spent too long in that place. But the other day, I did a quantum healing hypnosis towards these things. A couple, actually. I did one specifically towards like mother wounding and voicing, expressing myself, my needs, the things that I always kept silent because I didn't want to make her unhappy. That people pleasing that I've had my whole life towards both my parents. Navigating that, and then bringing in like the divine mother. So I see God as mother, father, God, both masculine, feminine characteristics, and bringing in like that feminine side of the creator, that incredibly loving, nurturing, safe place. And actually, I was doing this again today, like a couple hours before I'm recording this. And it was the most peaceful experience of my life, I think, where I just felt so incredibly held. And it was like the Divine Mother was speaking to me, hugging me, both adult Kara and child Kara, and just like speaking so much love into her and letting her know how good enough she is, and that she doesn't need to keep trying harder, that she's already worthy of all the things that she's worked towards or dreaming of. And like, no conditions, just pure unconditional love. And truly don't think I've ever felt that before. And so I sat there, curled up in bed, crying my eyes out, feeling like I could just relax into this space, feeling my nervous system relax as well, of like, I don't need to try to prove myself anymore. I don't need to convince or over-explain or care about the judgments. Ignore the dog if you can hear the noises in the background. I don't need to fight to be seen by a lower program that isn't capable of appreciating me fully, because the wounded feminine isn't capable of appreciating herself fully. That's why she's always blaming. That's why the victim or martyr comes in, because like they're not able to take their own happiness into their hands, and it's just a lot easier to judge or finger point or look outside of themselves. That's also why I love this work, because you will never, ever, ever in a million years create the life that you want. You'll never attract the relationships, the money, the impact, the business, the peace that you want if you're giving your power to anyone or anything outside of you. The second the victim comes into play, you've just given your power away. You've just handed it to someone or something else. And that ties into the second quantum healing hypnosis I was doing, was related to taking back my power from all these years, all these memories, all these different times, not only with my mom, but I had, like I said, the teammates, the mothers of my teammates, the teachers. Most of my coaches, I think, were men, so I don't really think I had that kind of lower feminine from them. But it was just like seeing all these times where I accepted, unknowingly, unconsciously accepted that this is what it is, I guess. And like, I guess this is normal, or this is how we operate. And I guess I just need to become more. I guess I need to just try harder, or hide this part of me and only show this side, or whatever the case may be, in order to finally be accepted by the lower feminine. And I took the power back from those moments by realizing where I gave that power or strength away, where I played smaller, filling those back up as if I had stood up for myself, as if I had shown up empowered or in my fullest, if I didn't let their mood ruin my day or hold me back from showing up how I want to show up. Which leads me into the second key point around the wounded feminine, and why it's holding you back from the things that you desire, is because of shame. And if you've ever looked into the vibrational scale of energies, you've probably seen that shame is like at the very bottom. I forget the exact order, but I think shame and guilt are down there at the very bottom. And it's literally been measured, the way that these different emotions impact our body. So you can see that like the vibration of love resonates at a certain frequency. Neutrality obviously is like more in the middle. Then you've got like anger, and you've got grief, and you've got these different lower vibrational emotions. But what surprised me, because I've gone through the grief and it's brutal, but what surprised me is that shame and guilt as well, I think, are both actually measuring lower than grief. And I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, no way. It's impossible. There's no way that anything could be more painful or heavy than grief. But you think about shame, and it's this low burning energy, maybe. I don't know, maybe that's maybe I'm making things up. I feel like it's this low but tumultuous constant burn, and it comes with that unworthiness. Like, you feel shameful because you don't feel worthy. You feel shame because you think it's bad. And what shame does, obviously, is it blocks us from feeling true joy or true pleasure. And the wounded feminine archetype, or the wounded feminine programming, she is so unhappy in herself. She is so unhappy with the world. All she does is find fault in everyone and everything, including herself. And what does that do? That creates shame. Because when you're judging someone or something, you are shaming them, right? And how can you possibly feel worthy of attracting what you want if you're stuck always feeling ashamed of wanting it, or ashamed of certain past mistakes or ways you've shown up, or all these things, all these stories that are making you feel like you're not good enough. And so then this shame gets stronger. It continues to bubble on this under the surface. That's the kind of burning I was referring to, was thinking of how, like, when it doesn't go resolved, when you don't work on it, all you do is start to feel worse. And so if, like, the wounded feminine, for example, if she is judging all these things and she's not happy and she wants to pull you into her victimhood with her, and then you inherently absorb that energy, and then you start to feel like it's bad to be happy, or it's bad to feel pleasure, it's bad to feel joy, it's bad to feel light and blissful, it's bad to shine and show up fully because I'm going to be judged for it, because I'm going to be criticized, because I'm going to be told that I wasn't good enough and I wasn't perfect, and so I shouldn't be that happy about it. I need to criticize or be better first, and then maybe I can feel happy. There's so many conditions that come with this wounded feminine that it blocks you from any joy. And I think you can probably come up with at least one person in your life, most likely more, who is operating from the wounded feminine, and you truly just felt like no matter what I do, I'll never be enough. And so when you're in their presence, you don't show up fully. You don't feel like you can be all of you, because they're going to find something that has a fault. They're going to find something to judge or complain about. And if they're not complaining or judging you, they're putting that on someone else or talking about it regarding someone else. And so you're still feeling that way. So this is the invitation to realize that pleasure and shame can't live in the same place. This is a huge part of, again, my own work and work with clients around reclaiming that and reclaiming our right to feel joy, to feel pleasure. That even though I may not measure up to someone else's standards, I'm allowed to be happy. I'm allowed to love myself. Even though I am unconventional, I'm allowed to believe that I'm worthy. I'm allowed to feel really good. I'm allowed to be supported and cared for in my life. I'm allowed to show up and shine and not feel ashamed, not beat myself up or feel lesser than, not judge myself because that's what other people might be judging me for, or that's what society might have been programmed to judge people for. So there's such a major reclamation when you stop allowing the wounded feminine to show up and influence your life. And that means setting the boundaries with physical people. Again, this could be men who are operating in a lower feminine at times, definitely not only isolated to women and females, but typically it's like very common because that is like the deep programming that has taken place. But you have this reclamation when you no longer tolerate that energy from yourself or from others. So I'm really going to invite you to look at, are there people in your life who are really operating from a wounded feminine energy and it's pulling you down? Are there ways that it has actually taken your power away and like hooked you? And I'll get into like energetic hooks in another episode because I've talked a lot. But it's like hooked to you and it's holding you in a lower frequency or in a lower plane of existence, in a lower way of showing up, in a lower external manifestation. You're literally in a lower timeline because this wounded feminine has pulled you down and is holding you in her pain, in her victimhood, in her judgment, in her shame, all that stuff. So notice if there's ways that this is holding you back right now. And then looking at the areas of like shame or pleasure. And do you feel guilt or shame around desiring more? Do you feel guilt or shame around feeling good and allowing pleasure into your life? Was it modeled to you that you shouldn't feel those things? Was pleasure or joy associated with judgment, as though someone was bad for having the money, having the nice car, having the things, having the partner, doing something different? Like all these conditions that came from literally someone who just wasn't happy in themselves, and they projected a lot, a lot of shit on you and on the people around them. In which case, there's never been a more beautiful time, my friend. The day is today to take your power back from those experiences, take your power back from that programming, as well reflecting on where am I operating from this place. So I noticed a couple years ago that I still had quite a bit of lower feminine programming playing out because I was feeling insecure or not good enough in myself. And so there was this kind of judgment or this shame or comparison, and not ever bringing other people down, but maybe questioning or, yeah, judging their life compared to mine. And like mostly my lower feminine programming came in like extreme negative self-talk, extreme self-judgment, and feelings of unworthiness because I wasn't meeting the conditions I was taught I needed to meet in order to be successful or good enough or loved. And this is where, as I said, the more you reflect on this, the sooner you can liberate yourself from a programming and a really heavy wounding that is not serving you. Those divine feminine characteristics, right? That deep unconditional love, that really deep connection to self and to intuition, that desire for us all to rise together. There's no competition. There's no like, oh, if she's having success or if this person's business did well, it means there's less for me. There's no lack or scarcity or victimhood in the divine feminine energy. And there's no martyrdom because there's such a healthy sense of self and personal boundaries and needs, and an empowerment in knowing that like I'm in control of filling my own cup and meeting my own needs. I'm not relying externally or looking for someone else to do that for me, therefore blaming or shaming or judging or criticizing. It's like I get to be this for myself and operate from my highest and overflow from this place. And that's such a beautiful way to create your life, but also it's where you can fully step into ownership of your purpose because you would have the healthy boundaries, you would know who you are and what you're here to do, and no one or no thing that's trying to shame you or hold you back would have power because you'd just be fully embodying your truth, your highest truth. So I'm going to leave this here for today. But as I mentioned, if you're wanting to dive into this much deeper and actually fully reprogram these lower aspects out of yourself so that you're free, this is linked below in my quantum healing hypnosis bundles. And you can always send me a message to chat, to ask questions if you're wanting to find the right one for you and your specific goals and needs. But I am wishing you the best on your journey as always. And I hope this episode can provide you with some major insights and breakthroughs around what might be holding you back and how the lower feminine and that programming is keeping you from showing up at your fullest, keeping you from attracting, creating, receiving all that is meant for you. and keeping you from feeling truly good as you do it. So I'll see you again soon. Sending so much love, and here's to you creating a new reality where you get to be all of you and you get to shine bright, confidently, wholly, whole, like WHOLEY, and in your full expression. We'll see you soon.